The courtroom was silent. Everyone, judges, lawyers, and even the cops who had arrested her, stared in shock. The 18-year-old black girl, her wrists still red from the too tight handcuffs, reached into her jacket pocket. The prosecutor smirked, expecting her to pull out some desperate excuse. The cops stood tall, convinced they had the right girl. The judge adjusted his glasses, looking unimpressed. Then she pulled it out. A sleek, black leather badge holder. She flipped it open with a snap, revealing the unmistakable golden emblem of the Central Intelligence Agency. Gasps echoed through the courtroom. The prosecutor's face drained of color. One of the cops, a burly man with a square jaw, actually took a step back. The judge's gavel, which he had been about to slam down, slipped from his fingers and clattered onto the bench. The room was frozen in disbelief. The girl, standing tall in her orange jumpsuit, spoke for the first time since her arrest. Her voice was calm, controlled. "You just made the biggest mistake of your life." The courtroom exploded into chaos. 3 weeks earlier, it was supposed to be a normal day, just another boring afternoon in a city that never cared about girls like her. Jasmine Carter walked down the sidewalk, her hoodie pulled tight over her curly hair. The summer sun blazed above, but she liked the warmth. It reminded her that she was alive, that she had made it this far. She glanced around, always alert. It was a habit she had picked up over the years. People thought they knew her kind, young, black, and alone. That was enough for cops to keep an eye on her. What they didn't know was that she wasn't just any teenager. Jasmine had spent the last 2 years training in ways most people couldn't even imagine. She had been handpicked, recruited for something bigger than herself. Her life wasn't about survival anymore. It was about something much, much greater. But right now, she was just a girl walking home from the grocery store. Until she saw them. 2 police officers, standing by their patrol car, whispering, looking directly at her. She felt it before it happened. The shift in the air. The way their bodies tensed. Then, "Hey, stop right there." Jasmine didn't stop. Not immediately. She knew the rules. If you ran, they chased. If you argued, they twisted your words. If you resisted, they made you regret it. She took a deep breath, turned slowly, and raised her hands. "I didn't do anything." One of the cops, a short, bald man with beady eyes, stalked toward her. "Turn around. Hands behind your back." Her stomach clenched. They weren't playing. "Sir, I think there's been a misunderstanding," she said carefully. "I'm just walking home." "Yeah? Well, we just got a report that someone matching your description stole from that store over there." He nodded toward the grocery store she had just left. Jasmine's heart pounded. "That's not true." The taller officer, built like a linebacker, grabbed her wrist. "You can explain it downtown." Instinct kicked in. She could have fought back, flipped him over her shoulder, and disappeared before they knew what hit them. But she couldn't. Not yet. Not without blowing her cover. So, she let them cuff her. Let them shove her into the back of the squad car. Let them slam the door, sealing her fate. As they drove away, the bald cop grinned at her through the rearview mirror. "Bet you wish you ran now, huh?" Jasmine sat still, staring out the window. They had no idea. This was about to be the worst mistake of their lives. The police station smelled like stale coffee and sweat. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, making everything feel colder. Jasmine sat in a hard plastic chair, wrists still cuffed. They had shoved her into a holding cell the moment they arrived, leaving her alone with nothing but her thoughts. She went over the facts. They had no real evidence. No stolen goods on her. No security footage. Just a so-called description that magically matched her. They weren't looking for justice. They were looking for someone to blame. And today, that someone was her. The door creaked open, and the bald cop walked in, holding a clipboard. He smirked like he had already won. "All right, kid. Let's make this easy. Just admit you stole the stuff, and maybe we can work something out." Jasmine raised an eyebrow. "I didn't steal anything." The cop sighed, shaking his head. "Look, we know how this goes. You mess up, you try to lie your way out of it, and then we lock you up anyway. So why don't you just make it easier for yourself?" She said nothing. The taller cop walked in next, holding a plastic evidence bag. Inside, there was a small, crumpled receipt. Found this in her pocket, he said, tossing it onto the table. The bald cop picked it up, squinting. Huh. Looks like she paid for her stuff. Jasmine crossed her arms. I told you. The taller cop scowled. Doesn't mean anything. Could be a fake. Jasmine clenched her fists. They didn't care about the truth. You're really gonna do this? She asked, voice steady. Charge me with a crime that never happened? The bald cop grinned. Why not? Who's gonna believe you? For the first time, Jasmine smiled. Oh, she said, leaning forward. You'd be surprised. The trial was set for 2 weeks later. Jasmine had no family to call for help, no lawyer she could trust, no friends she could risk exposing to this mess. But she wasn't scared. She had a plan. She spent those 2 weeks playing the part, acting like a frightened, powerless girl caught in a system designed to break her. And then, the day of the trial came. She walked into that courtroom, chains around her wrists, every eye on her. The prosecutor smirked. The cops stood tall, ready to see her thrown away like yesterday's trash. The judge asked her to speak, and that's when she did it. She reached into her jacket pocket, because of course they hadn't checked properly, and she pulled it out. Her badge. Her CIA badge. The room erupted. The prosecutor's smirk vanished. The cops turned pale. The judge dropped his gavel. And Jasmine? She just stood there, cool as ever, and said the words that would change everything. You just made the biggest mistake of your life. The courtroom was in chaos. The prosecutor scrambled to regain control, but it was too late. Murmurs turned into gasps, gasps into shouts. The judge banged his gavel, but even he couldn't hide his shock. The 2 cops who had arrested Jasmine looked like they had seen a ghost. Jasmine stood still, watching it all unfold. Then the judge spoke, his voice trembling with disbelief. Miss Carter, would you care to explain why you have a CIA badge? Jasmine took a deep breath. She had known this moment would come, but it was sooner than she expected. She looked around the room, at the people who had been ready to throw her in jail without a second thought, at the cops who thought they could frame her, at the prosecutor who had smirked, thinking he had an easy win. Now, they were afraid. Good. Jasmine slowly closed the badge holder and tucked it back into her pocket. Then, she spoke. With all due respect, Your Honor, I think we should start at the beginning. 3 years earlier, Jasmine was 15 when she learned the world was bigger than she ever imagined. She had always been smart. Not just book smart, street smart. She knew how to read people, how to disappear when she needed to, how to listen without being noticed. Growing up in foster care had taught her that. Her life had been one long game of survival, and she was winning. Until the night everything changed. She had been walking home from her part-time job when she saw it. A man in a dark suit, sitting on a bench, watching her. He wasn't like the usual creeps she avoided on the streets. No, this guy was different. Too clean, too calm. She ignored him and kept walking. But the next day, he was there again. And the next. Then, one night, as she cut through an alley, she felt someone behind her. Her heart pounded. She spun around, ready to fight. And there he was, the man from the bench. Except this time, he spoke. You're smarter than you let people think. Jasmine narrowed her eyes. Who are you? The man smiled. My name is Agent Cole, and I'm here to change your life. At first, Jasmine thought it was a joke. CIA? Spying? Missions? It sounded like something out of a movie, but the tests were real. They took her to a secret location, ran her through obstacle courses, tested her memory, her reflexes, her instincts, and she passed. Every single one. She wasn't just good. She was better. And so, at 15 years old, she became part of something bigger than she ever imagined. The agency trained her in ways normal people couldn't even dream of. Disguises, weapons, surveillance, combat. She learned how to vanish, how to fight, how to lie so well that even she believed it. By the time she turned 18, she wasn't just some kid from the system anymore. She was an operative. Back in the courtroom, Jasmine let the silence stretch. She could feel the tension, the weight of her words sinking in. The judge leaned forward, his hands gripping the bench. Are you telling me That you are actually an agent of the Central Intelligence Agency? Jasmine held his gaze.
Yes.
The prosecutor shook his head. That's ridiculous. She's just a teenager. Jasmine smirked. Yeah? Then why don't you call the agency and ask them? The prosecutor hesitated. His face paled. He knew. If she was telling the truth, he was in deep trouble. One of the officers took a step back, sweat beading on his forehead. This is crazy. We arrested her fair and square. Jasmine turned toward him, her expression turning ice cold. You framed me, she said. The room went still. The judge looked between her and the officers. Is that true? The bald cop stammered. We got a report. From who? Jasmine interrupted. Who exactly said I stole something? Silence. She smirked. Yeah, that's what I thought. The judge turned to the prosecutor. I want verification on her claims immediately. A clerk rushed out of the room to make the call. The tension was suffocating. Jasmine stayed calm. She had been trained for moments like this. 5 minutes passed. Then 10. Then the clerk ran back into the room, breathless. She whispered something to the judge. His face went white. He slowly turned toward Jasmine, then to the cops, then to the prosecutor. Ladies and gentlemen. His voice was barely above a whisper. We have a problem. Jasmine tilted her head. Oh? What kind of problem? The judge gripped his gavel tightly. The CIA has just confirmed her identity. Gasps rang through the room. Jasmine crossed her arms, staring at the cops who had arrested her. Now, she said, voice calm but deadly. Let's talk about what happens next. The courtroom was dead silent. The judge's words still hung in the air. The CIA has just confirmed her identity. The prosecutor looked like he had been punched in the stomach. The two cops who arrested Jasmine were as pale as ghosts. The taller one kept swallowing hard, while the bald one's hands fidgeted like he was trying to figure out if running was an option. Jasmine? She just stood there, arms crossed, watching it all fall apart. Then the judge cleared his throat. His face was still pale, but his voice was firm. Miss Carter, you are officially identified as a CIA operative. That makes your arrest highly questionable. The prosecutor snapped out of his shock. He shot to his feet, scrambling for control. Your Honor, this must be a mistake. She's 18. How could she be a CIA agent? Jasmine smirked. Maybe if you were better at your job, you'd know the government has been recruiting young operatives for years. But you wouldn't know that, would you? She tilted her head. Because you only see what you expect to see. A black girl in handcuffs? Must be guilty. Right. The prosecutor's face burned red. Jasmine turned to the cops. And you two? What was it? Needed to fill a quota? Thought I was an easy target. The taller cop's lip twitched. He finally snapped. You think you're so smart, huh? He sneered. So what? You're CIA? You still got arrested. Still got locked up like every other thug on the street. The courtroom gasped. Jasmine's smirk vanished. She stepped forward, staring him down. Say that again. The bald cop elbowed his partner, but it was too late. The words had already come out. Jasmine's voice dropped to a deadly calm. I don't think you understand how deep in trouble you are. She turned to the judge. Your Honor, not only did they arrest me under false charges, but they ignored evidence that proved my innocence. That's misconduct at best. At worst, she let that hang in the air before continuing. At worst, it's a targeted attack against a federal agent. The judge's eyes narrowed at the two cops. That is a serious accusation. I have proof. Every head in the courtroom snapped toward Jasmine. The prosecutor frowned. What proof? Jasmine pulled something else out of her pocket. A small recording device. The taller cop went rigid. The bald one swore under his breath. Jasmine pressed play. The room filled with their voices. Yeah? Well, we just got a report that someone matching your description stole from that store over there. That's not true. Turn around. Hands behind your back. Sir, I think there's been a misunderstanding. I'm just walking home. Doesn't matter. We just need someone to take the fall. Gasps. Murmurs. The courtroom exploded into whispers. Jasmine let it play to the end. Then she turned to the judge. They weren't investigating a crime. They were looking for someone to blame, and they picked me. The prosecutor looked sick. He had built his entire case on their word, and now it was all falling apart. The judge slammed his gavel down. This court will immediately launch an investigation into Officers Reynolds and Cook. The two cops, Reynolds, the taller one, and Cook, the bald one, started to panic. "Why, Your Honor, this is all a misunderstanding," Reynolds stammered. "Yeah," Cook chimed in. We were just doing our jobs." The judge's face darkened. "Your job is to uphold the law, not break it." He turned to the prosecutor. "And you built your entire case on these officers' claims. How do you respond?" The prosecutor opened his mouth, closed it, opened it again. Nothing. Jasmine smiled. Checkmate. An hour later, Jasmine was free. The judge had dismissed the case on the spot, ordering an immediate review of the officer's conduct. Reynolds and Cook had been escorted out of the courtroom, their faces filled with pure terror. Jasmine stepped outside the courthouse, breathing in the cool, fresh air. She had won, but she wasn't done, because now she wanted answers. Who really called in that fake report? Why did they target her specifically? And most importantly, was this just a mistake? Or was someone trying to take her down? Jasmine didn't believe in coincidences. And if someone thought they could take her out this easily, they had another thing coming. She pulled out her phone, dialed a number. A voice picked up instantly. "Carter," the voice said. "You good?" Jasmine's eyes narrowed. "Find out who's behind this," she said. "Now." The line went dead. Jasmine slid the phone back into her pocket and started walking. She had work to do. Jasmine moved through the city streets like a shadow, her mind racing. The case was dismissed. She was free. But something wasn't right. She had been arrested under false charges. The cops had clearly been looking for someone to blame. But why her? She wasn't just some random girl. She was CIA, someone knew that. And someone wanted her gone. As she walked, her phone buzzed. She glanced down. A secured message from her contact. "Got something. Meet me now." She slipped into an alley, checked her surroundings, and disappeared into the city. Jasmine's contact, Nia, was waiting for her at a small, rundown cafe on the east side of town. Nia wasn't just any informant. She was ex-agency, one of the best hackers Jasmine had ever met. They had worked together on missions before, and if anyone could track down who was behind this, it was her. Jasmine slid into the booth across from her. "What do you have?" Nia didn't waste time. She pushed a tablet across the table. This wasn't random. Jasmine's stomach tightened. "I knew it." Nia tapped the screen, bringing up a file. "Check this out." Jasmine leaned forward. Surveillance footage. It was grainy, but she could make out a man in a suit, standing near the grocery store where she had been arrested. He wasn't just watching. He was on a phone, talking. And then, Jasmine's heart skipped a beat. He turned slightly, just enough for the camera to catch a glimpse of his face. She knew him. Her hands clenched into fists. "That's impossible." Nia gave her a sharp look. "So you recognize him?" Jasmine nodded, her pulse thudding in her ears. "That's Director Marcus Steele." Nia froze. The Marcus Steele? As in, Deputy Director of the CIA? Jasmine nodded slowly. If Steele had been there, if he had made the call to frame her, this went way deeper than she thought. Nia exhaled. "Jazz, if he's behind this, you're in some serious trouble." Jasmine's jaw tightened. "I don't scare easy." Nia hesitated. "Then you need to be careful. Steele isn't just some agent. He's got power. If he wanted you locked up, there's a reason." Jasmine leaned back, trying to process. Steele had recruited her. He had trained her. And now, he was trying to get rid of her. The question was, why? She stared at the footage again, her mind spinning. Then she froze. Something wasn't right. She leaned in, eyes narrowing. "Wait. Zoom in." Nia tapped the screen, enlarging a section of the video. Jasmine's breath caught. Steele was talking to someone. A second figure, mostly hidden in the shadows. Jasmine's voice dropped to a whisper. "Who is that?" Nia frowned. "Let me see if I can enhance." Before she could finish, the cafe door slammed open. Jasmine's instinct screamed. She flipped the table, grabbing Nia and yanking her down just as gunfire erupted. Bullets ripped through the cafe, shattering glass and sending customers screaming. Jasmine hit the ground, adrenaline surging. They had been found. Someone didn't want them to see that footage. She reached for her gun, only to remember she wasn't armed. She had been in court just hours ago. She hadn't expected a fight this soon. She and Nia crawled behind the counter as bullets pounded into the walls. Who the hell are they? Nia gasped. Jasmine peeked around the corner. 3 men, black tactical gear, silencers on their weapons. Professional. And they were here for her. We need to move, Jasmine whispered. Nia nodded, breathing hard. Back exit. Jasmine gave a quick count between shots, then grabbed Nia's wrist. Go. They bolted, sprinting through the back hallway as bullets whizzed past them. Jasmine shoved open the back door, and they burst into the alley. But they weren't alone. A black SUV screeched to a stop. More men jumped out. Jasmine and Nia were trapped. Jasmine clenched her jaw. No weapons. Outnumbered. This was bad. But she wasn't going down without a fight. She turned to Nia. When I say run, run. Nia's eyes widened. Jazz. Run. Jasmine charged forward, fists up, and then a car came out of nowhere, slamming into the SUV. The gunmen scattered. A door swung open. A man leaned out, shouting, "Get in." Jasmine hesitated for half a second, then grabbed Nia and dove into the car. The tires squealed as the driver hit the gas. Bullets rained down, but they were already gone. Jasmine turned to the driver. Her heart stopped. It was someone she never expected to see again. The man smirked. "Miss me?" Jasmine stared. Ryan. Ryan Carter. Her brother. The brother she thought was dead. Jasmine couldn't breathe. She stared at the driver's seat, her mind refusing to believe what she was seeing. Ryan. Her brother. The brother she had buried 3 years ago. The brother who had died in a warehouse explosion. The brother whose loss had shaped everything she had become. And yet, here he was, alive, driving like a madman as bullets rained down behind them. Jasmine's throat tightened. Her hands curled into fists. "Ryan," she whispered. He glanced at her in the rearview mirror, smirking. "Still sharp? Huh? I was wondering how long it'd take you to say something." Jasmine's chest burned. This wasn't possible. It couldn't be. And yet, here he was, her dead brother, alive. Before she could demand answers, gunfire erupted behind them. The black SUV they had escaped from was still chasing them, speeding through the dark streets. Jasmine snapped back into focus. "Faster," she ordered. Ryan laughed. "You don't need to tell me twice." He yanked the wheel, sending the car into a sharp drift, barely avoiding an oncoming truck. Nia clung to the door, yelling, "Who the hell is this guy?" Jasmine gritted her teeth. "That's what I want to know." The SUV was gaining. More gunmen leaned out of the windows, their silencers flashing. Jasmine cursed. They weren't just trying to kill her. They wanted to erase her. No witnesses. No loose ends. "Gimme a gun," she demanded. Ryan snorted. "Still bossy, I see." He reached under the dashboard and tossed her a Glock 19. Jasmine caught it, chambered around, and leaned out the window. The wind roared against her face as she aimed. She took a breath. Steady. Focused. Precise. Her fingers squeezed the trigger. Bang. The SUV's front tire exploded. The driver lost control, the vehicle swerving violently before smashing into a row of parked cars. Jasmine pulled back inside as flames erupted behind them. Ryan let out a low whistle. "Damn, Jazz." "Still got it." She ignored him. Her hands were shaking. Not from the fight. From him. Her brother. Alive. She turned to him, eyes blazing. "You. Talk. Now." Ryan sighed. All right. But not here. We gotta get somewhere safe first." Jasmine clenched her jaw. Fine. But once they got there, he was going to explain everything. 20 minutes later, they pulled into an abandoned warehouse on the edge of the city. Ryan parked the car, turned off the engine, and let out a breath. "All right, we're good." Jasmine threw open the door and stormed out. Ryan barely had time to react before she punched him across the face. Hard. He stumbled back, holding his jaw. "Damn, sis. That's how you say hello? Jasmine's blood boiled. You were dead, Ryan. I buried you. He rubbed his face, still grinning. Not exactly. She shoved him. Then start talking. Ryan sighed. Look, I couldn't tell you. It wasn't safe. Jasmine narrowed her eyes. Safe for who? Ryan hesitated. Then he said something that made her stomach drop. Safe for you. Jasmine froze. Her heart pounded. Ryan ran a hand through his hair. Listen, Jazz. That explosion 3 years ago? It wasn't an accident. She already knew that. She had investigated it herself. It was steel, she said. Ryan's eyes flickered with surprise. Then he nodded. Yeah, Steele ordered the hit. But it wasn't just to take me out. Jasmine frowned. Then what? Ryan exhaled. He wanted to recruit you. Jasmine's breath hitched. Steele needed someone like you. Someone young, smart, and deadly. He knew the only way to do that was to make you feel like you had nothing left to lose. Jasmine felt like the ground had been ripped out from under her. Her entire journey, joining the CIA, training, becoming an operative, had all been part of Steele's plan. Ryan watched her, guilt in his eyes. I had to disappear. If I didn't, Steele would have used me as leverage. He would have forced you into the agency. Jasmine's hands trembled. Everything. Everything she had built, everything she had fought for, had been a lie. Her grief, her rage, her entire purpose, manipulated. Her stomach churned. She felt sick. She shook her head. No, I made my own choices. Ryan's expression softened. Did you? Jasmine's breathing was shallow. This wasn't happening. This couldn't be happening. Then Nia, who had been silent the whole time, finally spoke. Guys, we have another problem. Jasmine snapped back to reality. Nia was staring at her laptop, eyes wide. She turned the screen toward them. It was a news broadcast. Jasmine's face was on the screen, and the words beneath it made her blood run cold. Fugitive CIA agent Jasmine Carter, armed and dangerous. Jasmine's heart stopped. Ryan swore. Steele just made you the most wanted person in the country. Nia looked at them. What do we do now? Jasmine took a deep breath. Her world was falling apart. Her name was ruined. Her life was in danger. But one thing was clear. This wasn't over. Jasmine's eyes burned with fire. She looked at Ryan. We find Steele, and we end this. Jasmine stared at the screen, her own face staring back at her. Fugitive CIA agent Jasmine Carter, armed and dangerous. Her hands clenched into fists. Ryan swore under his breath. Nia tapped furiously at her laptop. Jasmine took a deep breath. She had trained for chaos. She had trained for war. But this was personal. Steele just made his move, Ryan muttered. Nia looked up, eyes filled with worry. This is bad, Jazz. Every law enforcement agency in the country is going to be after you now. The FBI, Homeland Security, maybe even the military if Steele pulls enough strings. Jasmine didn't flinch. Then we move. Now. She turned to Ryan. How did you even find me? Ryan smirked. I never lost you. Jasmine raised an eyebrow. Ryan sighed. Look, I've been watching over you since the day Steele recruited you. I couldn't get close, not without blowing my cover, but I always made sure you were okay. Jasmine's jaw tightened. So you just let me believe you were dead? Ryan's smirk faded. I had to. If you knew I was alive, Steele would have known too. And then? He would have used me against you. Jasmine wanted to be angry. She wanted to punch him again. But deep down, she understood. She turned to Nia. Can you wipe this? She gestured at the news broadcast. Nia frowned. Steele's good. He's got control over multiple networks, meaning this story is everywhere. I can erase some of it, maybe slow it down, but I can't make it disappear completely. Jasmine exhaled. Fine. Then we hit back another way. Ryan crossed his arms. What's the plan? Jasmine's eyes hardened. We make Steele regret ever coming after me. Ryan grinned. I like where this is going. Jasmine turned back to Nia. I need every piece of dirt on Steele. His offshore accounts, personal transactions, black ops missions, everything. Nia hesitated. You realize this means war, right? Jasmine didn't blink. It was war the moment he framed me. 30 minutes later, they were on the move. Ryan had stolen a new getaway vehicle, an unmarked SUV that wouldn't stand out. Nia had packed up her gear, already working on hacking Steele's systems from the back seat. Jasmine sat in the front, staring out the window. Every billboard, every TV screen on the street showed her face. Fugitive, criminal, enemy of the state. Steele had flipped the script, turned the hunter into the hunted. She tightened her grip on the dashboard. Not for long. Ryan pulled into a dimly lit parking garage. "All right," he said, throwing the car into park. "Where do we start?" Jasmine looked at Nia. "What do you have?" Nia adjusted her glasses. "Steele's smart. Most of his operations are buried under multiple aliases. But I found something interesting." She turned the laptop around. It was a private jet flight log. Jasmine leaned in. "He was in DC 3 days ago." Ryan frowned. "So?" Nia zoomed in. "He wasn't alone." Another name appeared on the flight log. Jasmine's stomach dropped. It was a name she hadn't seen in years. Senator Charles Whitmore. Ryan let out a low whistle. "Now that's interesting." Jasmine's mind raced. Whitmore was one of the most powerful men in Washington. He had been involved in black ops funding, quietly approving off-the-record missions for years. If Steele had met with him, this wasn't just about her. This was about something bigger. Jasmine exhaled. "We need to get to Whitmore." Ryan arched an eyebrow. "You realize that breaking into a senator's private estate is a suicide mission, right?" Jasmine smirked. "Not if you do it right." Ryan chuckled. "Damn, I missed you." Jasmine glanced at Nia. "How fast can you get me a way in?" Nia was already typing. "Give me an hour." Jasmine nodded. "Then let's gear up." Ryan grinned. "Now you're talking." 1 hour later, they were parked outside Senator Whitmore's mansion. The estate was massive, a fortress of security, with armed guards patrolling the perimeter and surveillance cameras covering every inch. Jasmine studied the blueprints Nia had pulled up. "All right," she said. "There's a blind spot on the west side. We scale the wall, take out the guards quietly, and get inside." Ryan smirked. "And then?" Jasmine's eyes gleamed. "Then we make Whitmore talk." Ryan's grin widened. "Let's do this." They moved fast. Jasmine scaled the wall like a ghost, landing silently on the other side. Ryan followed. The first guard never saw them coming. Jasmine wrapped an arm around his neck, silencing him before he could even make a sound. Ryan took down the second guard with a swift strike to the throat. They moved toward the house. Jasmine picked the lock in 10 seconds. The door clicked open, and they slipped inside. The mansion was quiet. Too quiet. Ryan whispered, "Something's off." Jasmine nodded. "Yeah." They moved through the dark halls, every muscle coiled for a fight. Then, a soft beeping filled the air. Jasmine's heart stopped. "Run!" she yelled. The walls exploded. The force slammed her against the ground, deafening her. Smoke filled the air. She coughed, her vision spinning. Ryan groaned beside her. "What the hell?" Then, footsteps. A lot of them. Through the smoke, Jasmine saw figures in black tactical gear. They had walked into a trap. A boot slammed into her back, pinning her down. A voice spoke, cold, amused. "Jasmine Carter." Her blood froze. She knew that voice. Slowly, she turned her head and came face to face with Marcus Steele. He smirked. "You really should have stayed in jail." Jasmine gritted her teeth. Steele leaned down, his eyes glinting. "Game over." Jasmine's face pressed against the cold marble floor, Steele's boot digging into her back. Smoke still curled through the air, the remains of the explosion that had taken them down. Ryan groaned beside her, his hands bound behind his back with thick zip ties. The tactical team surrounded them, rifles aimed, visors hiding their faces. Jasmine clenched her jaw. They had walked right into a trap. Steele crouched down beside her, his smirk as sharp as a knife. "You know, Carter, I was really hoping you'd be smarter than this." He shook his head. "Coming after a sitting U.S. senator? Did you really think you could get away with that?" Jasmine met his gaze, her rage burning like fire. "You framed me." Steele raised an eyebrow. "I did." He didn't even try to deny it. Jasmine's hands fisted behind her back. Why? Steele tilted his head, like he was considering something. Then he sighed dramatically. Well, he said, since you're not leaving this place alive, I suppose it wouldn't hurt to tell you. Jasmine didn't flinch. You don't know me, Steele. I've already planned 10 ways out of here. But she let him talk. Let him think he had one. Steele stood up, pacing in front of them. The truth is, Carter, you're dangerous. Too good at what you do. Too unpredictable. And unpredictability? That's a liability in our world. Jasmine gritted her teeth. You made me. Steele chuckled. I did. And I was so proud of you. But then, well, he gave her a mock-sympathetic look. You started asking too many questions. You started digging into things you shouldn't. And that? He'd scared. That was a problem. Jasmine's heart pounded. What was I getting close to? Steele smirked. Oh, Jasmine, you're smart. Figure it out. Then he turned to his men. Kill them both. Jasmine moved. Fast. She twisted her bound hands under her legs, swinging her knees up and kicking Steele's legs out from under him. Steele hit the ground hard as Jasmine rolled, wrenching her wrists forward. Ryan saw his chance. He slammed his head back into the face of the nearest guard, shattering his visor. The moment the man stumbled, Ryan hooked his legs around him, twisting violently. Snap! The man dropped. Jasmine spun to her feet, grabbing the fallen rifle just as another guard fired. She ducked, rolled. Bang! Her bullet hit the shooter square in the chest. Ryan ripped off his restraints, grabbed a knife off one of the downed men, and tossed it to her. Jasmine caught it midair, slashing through her zip ties in one swift motion. Steele was staggering to his feet, his smirk gone. Jasmine leveled the rifle at him. Steele's men froze. Tell them to stand down, she ordered, her voice cold. Steele's face darkened. You won't shoot me, Carter. Jasmine's finger tightened on the trigger. Ryan smirked beside her. You don't know my sister very well. Steele hesitated. Then his expression shifted, from fear to something worse. Amusement. Jasmine's gut twisted. Something was wrong. Steele lifted his wrist to his mouth and spoke into a hidden comms device. Execute the senator. Jasmine's blood ran cold. No. A gunshot rang out from the next room. Jasmine and Ryan spun toward the sound, but it was too late. A few seconds later, 2 more tactical guards dragged in a lifeless body. Senator Charles Whitmore. A single bullet hole in his forehead. Steele smiled. Now, who do you think they're going to blame? Jasmine's stomach dropped. Steele had set her up again. He hadn't just framed her as a fugitive. Now, she was an assassin. Ryan cursed under his breath. We need to go. Now. Jasmine knew he was right. She glared at Steele one last time. This isn't over. Steele smirked. Oh, I hope not. Then Jasmine threw a smoke grenade from her belt. The room erupted in thick fog, shouts echoing through the air. She and Ryan bolted. The mansion was collapsing into chaos, alarms blaring, guards swarming. Jasmine sprinted through the halls, dodging bullets, vaulting over furniture, barely avoiding the gunfire raining down around them. They burst out the back door, feet pounding against the pavement. Ryan hotwired a car in seconds, and Jasmine jumped in as he floored it. The estate vanished behind them. Jasmine pressed her hands to her temples, trying to breathe. Steele had won this round. He had turned the entire country against her. And now? She and Ryan were officially the most wanted fugitives in America. But Jasmine wasn't broken. She wasn't running. She was going to end this, one way or another. The car sped through the dark streets, the sound of sirens wailing in the distance. Jasmine clenched her jaw, gripping the dashboard as Ryan weaved in and out of traffic. The city was on lockdown. Roadblocks, helicopters circling, searchlights sweeping through the streets. They were hunting her. The news stations were already broadcasting the lie. Breaking news. Fugitive CIA agent Jasmine Carter assassinates U.S. Senator Charles Whitmore. Her face was everywhere. Ryan's hands tightened on the wheel. We need to disappear. Fast. Jasmine's mind spun. This wasn't just about survival anymore. Steele wasn't just trying to kill her. He wanted her name destroyed. He wanted history to remember her as a traitor, a murderer, A monster. She wouldn't let that happen. We're not running, she said. Ryan shot her a look. Jazz, the entire damn country is after you. Jasmine exhaled, forcing her mind to focus. No, she said. They're after the person Steele created. The fugitive. The assassin. Ryan frowned. And what does that mean? Jasmine turned to Nia, who was hunched over her laptop in the back seat, typing furiously. Nia, can you break into Steele's private files? Nia let out a frustrated breath. I've been trying. The guy's security is insane. Whatever he's hiding. He does not want anyone finding it. Jasmine's gut tightened. There had to be something. A weakness. A trail. Anything that led to the truth. She looked back at Ryan. We need to find someone who knows what Steele is planning. Ryan scoffed. You mean besides the dead senator? Jasmine's jaw tightened. Whitmore had been a piece of the puzzle, but he wasn't the only one involved. Steele was high up, but he wasn't working alone. She needed another name. Her mind raced, going through every mission, every classified document she had ever read. Then it hit her. She turned to Nia. Pull up Steele's financial records. Nia frowned. You think he left a money trail? No, Jasmine said. But I think his partners did. Nia's fingers flew across the keyboard. Lines of code flashed. Red error messages. More code. Then, beep. Nia's breath caught. Oh, damn. Jasmine leaned over. A bank transaction popped up on the screen. It was a large sum of money, wired from an offshore account to an unnamed recipient. But the memo line chilled Jasmine to the bone. Final phase. Asset termination. Ryan narrowed his eyes. What the hell does that mean? Jasmine's hands clenched into fists. It means Steele is planning to clean house. He wasn't just trying to kill her. He was eliminating every loose end. Ryan's face darkened. You think there are more targets? Jasmine nodded. People who know too much. People who could expose him. She scrolled down, scanning the recipient details. Then she froze. Ryan frowned. What? Jasmine's breath hitched. One of the listed targets was someone she never expected. Agent Cole, her mentor, the man who had recruited her into the CIA. Ryan's eyes widened. Wait, you're saying Steele is planning to kill the guy who brought you into the agency? Jasmine's heart pounded. This wasn't just a cover-up. Steele was erasing everything. Her past, her allies, her entire existence. Ryan gripped the wheel. Then we find Cole. Before they do. 20 minutes later, they pulled up outside a small, abandoned church. Nia had traced Cole's last known location to this place. Jasmine stepped out of the car, gripping her gun. Ryan followed, his eyes scanning the shadows. Something felt wrong. Too quiet. Too empty. Jasmine moved fast, pushing through the church doors, and froze. There, in the middle of the room, tied to a chair, was Agent Cole. Blood dripped from his temple. His hands were bound behind his back, and standing beside him, gun in hand, was Steele. Jasmine's breath caught. Steele smirked. You just don't know when to quit, do you? Jasmine raised her gun. Let him go. Steele sighed, shaking his head. You know, Jasmine, I really thought you'd be smarter than this. He pressed the barrel of his gun against Cole's head. Jasmine's hands tightened on her weapon. You shoot him, and you'll be dead before you hit the ground. Steele's grin widened. Oh, Carter. His eyes glinted. You still don't get it, do you? Jasmine's pulse pounded. Steele's voice dropped to a whisper. This was never about you. Then, gunfire. Ryan shoved her down just as bullets tore through the air. Steele's men rushed in, automatic rifles aimed. Cole shouted, trying to struggle free. Jasmine rolled behind a pew, bullets whizzing past her head. Ryan returned fire, dropping one of the guards. Jasmine's mind raced. She needed to get to Cole. But before she could move, a loud click echoed through the church. A detonator. Jasmine's stomach dropped. Steele smirked. If I can't have him. His thumb pressed down. Boom. The entire building exploded. The explosion ripped through the church, sending Jasmine flying. The heat scorched her skin, the deafening roar swallowing everything. She hit the ground hard, debris crashing around her. The air filled with smoke, dust, and the sharp sting of fire. For a moment, Everything was silent. Then, gunfire. Jasmine's instincts kicked in. She rolled to the side, ignoring the pain in her ribs. Her vision was blurred, but she saw figures moving through the wreckage. Steele's men. Her mind snapped back into focus. Where's Ryan? Where's Cole? A groan sounded nearby. Jasmine turned, her heart clenching as she saw Ryan half buried under debris. Ryan! She gasped, crawling toward him. He coughed, his face smeared with dust and blood. I'm good, he muttered, wincing as he pushed a chunk of concrete off his leg. Where's Cole? Jasmine's stomach twisted. She spun toward the center of the destruction. Cole's chair was empty. The ropes that had bound him were burned away, but there was no sign of his body. Steele was gone. Jasmine's pulse pounded. No. She shoved up to her feet, ignoring the pain. He's alive. Ryan pulled himself up beside her. You don't know that. Jasmine's eyes blazed. Yes, I do. If Steele had wanted Cole dead, he wouldn't have set off an explosion. He would have put a bullet in his head. This wasn't an execution. It was a distraction. Steele wanted them out of the picture while he took Cole somewhere else. Jasmine exhaled sharply, her mind racing. Then she turned to Ryan. We need to move. Ryan let out a bitter laugh. Move? Jazz, we barely made it out of that alive. We have no weapons, no backup, and the entire damn country is hunting us. Jasmine didn't blink. She pulled a small device from her pocket, a tracking beacon. Ryan's eyebrows shot up. You tagged Steele? Jasmine smirked. You think I'd let him walk away without insurance? Ryan shook his head, grinning despite himself. Damn, I missed working with you. Jasmine's eyes flicked to Nia, who had managed to crawl out from the wreckage, her laptop miraculously unharmed. Nia, Jasmine called, tossing her the tracker. Find out where he's taking Cole. Nia's hands flew across the keys. The small screen blinked, processing data. Then, beep. Nia's eyes widened. Oh, hell. Jasmine and Ryan leaned over the screen. A location popped up. An off-the-grid black site outside of D.C. Jasmine's heart pounded. Ryan let out a low whistle. That's a CIA ghost facility. Jasmine's jaw tightened. If Steele was taking Cole there, it meant one thing. Interrogation, torture, and then execution. Jasmine's grip on the laptop tightened. She was done running. She wasn't going to let Steele win. Ryan studied her face. You're thinking something reckless, aren't you? Jasmine's eyes burned with fire. We're breaking into the most secure black site in the country, she said. Ryan blinked. Then he grinned. Damn right we are. 3 hours later, Jasmine crouched on the edge of a rooftop, staring at the heavily guarded facility below. Floodlights, guard patrols, cameras. Steele had made sure no one was getting in or out. Jasmine glanced at Ryan and Nia. We go in quiet. No alarms. No mistakes. Ryan loaded his gun. Got it. Nia adjusted her headset. I'll jam the security feeds, but I can only hold it for 5 minutes. Jasmine nodded. 5 minutes is all I need. Ryan smirked. That's my sister. Jasmine took one last breath. Then they moved. She scaled the wall, landing silently on the other side. A guard turned the corner. Jasmine struck fast. One hit to the throat. The man collapsed without a sound. Ryan took out the next guard, dragging his body into the shadows. 3 minutes left. They reached the main doors. Nia's voice crackled through the earpiece. You're clear. But move fast. I can't hold this much longer. Jasmine and Ryan slipped inside. The hallways were cold, sterile, too quiet. Then, Jasmine heard it. A muffled scream. Cole. Jasmine's heart pounded. Ryan nodded. Let's go. They followed the sound, past steel doors, past interrogation rooms, until they reached a reinforced security door. Jasmine's hands flew over the keypad, hacking into the lock. Ryan covered her, his gun ready. Then, click. The door slid open. Jasmine stepped inside. And there he was. Agent Cole. Bloodied. Bruised. Barely conscious. Steele stood over him, a knife in hand. Jasmine raised her gun. Step away from him. Steele turned slowly. Then, he smiled. Like he had been expecting her. Jasmine's gut twisted. Something wasn't right. Steele chuckled. You always were predictable. Then, the doors slammed shut behind them. Jasmine spun. The keypad locked out. Ryan cursed. Damn it, it's a trap. Steele's smile widened. You walked right into it. Jasmine's grip on her gun tightened. Steele took a step forward. You think this is about you, Carter? His voice was mocking. Jasmine didn't respond. Because she saw something behind him. A screen. And on that screen, a countdown. 2 minutes. Jasmine's breath caught. She looked around. The walls. The ceiling. There were explosives everywhere. Steele smirked. This facility? It's a tomb. Jasmine's pulse raced. Steele was going to bury them all. Her. Ryan. Cole. Everyone. Unless. She acted now. Jasmine took a deep breath. And then, she pulled the trigger. Bang. Steele staggered back. A bullet slamming into his shoulder. Ryan lunged forward, knocking the knife from Steele's hand. Jasmine rushed to Cole, cutting him free. 1 minute left. Nia's voice shouted through the earpiece. Jasmine threw Cole's arm over her shoulder. We're getting out of here. Ryan kicked open a side panel, a ventilation shaft. Jasmine shoved Cole inside. Ryan followed. 30 seconds. Jasmine climbed in last. But before she closed the hatch, she turned back. Steele was still smiling. You'll never win, Carter. Jasmine's eyes burned. She slammed the hatch shut. 10 seconds. They crawled fast. Through the vents, through the tunnels. 3 seconds. Jasmine burst outside. Boom. The ground shook. The black site collapsed in flames behind them. Jasmine stared at the destruction. Then she turned to Ryan and Cole. This isn't over. Ryan grinned. Damn right it's not. Jasmine exhaled. It was time to finish this. For good. The black site burned behind them, flames licking at the sky. Smoke choked the air. The ground rumbled beneath their feet as the last of the facility collapsed into itself. Jasmine didn't look back. She couldn't. She didn't have time. Ryan leaned against the side of their stolen SUV, panting. Tell me, that bastard's dead. Jasmine wasn't sure. Steele had smiled before the explosion, and that meant he had a way out. Cole, barely standing, groaned as he wiped blood from his face. He's alive. His voice was rough, tired. Jasmine's fist clenched. Ryan cursed under his breath. So, what now? We go hunting for him? We can't keep running forever, Jazz. Jasmine exhaled, staring at the fire. No, they weren't running anymore. They were ending this. Steele has nowhere left to hide, she said, turning to Nia. We need to take everything we have and expose him. Nia nodded, already pulling up her laptop. I've been digging through Steele's files. That black site wasn't just a prison. It was a vault. She turned the screen toward them. Steele's been running off-the-books operations for years. Assassinations, coups, high-level corruption. If this gets out, the entire U.S. government will have no choice but to turn on him. Ryan whistled. So we're about to burn down his whole empire? Jasmine's eyes gleamed. Oh, we're gonna do more than that. 12 hours later, Washington, D.C. Jasmine sat in the passenger seat, watching the Capitol building loom in the distance. This was where it would end. Steele had controlled the system from the shadows for too long. Now, she was going to drag him into the light. Ryan, gripping the wheel, glanced at her. You sure about this? Jasmine nodded. It's the only way. Nia, sitting in the back seat, gave them both a thumbs up. I just sent the files to every news outlet, intelligence agency, and federal watchdog in the country. She grinned. Steele's name is about to be everywhere. Ryan smirked. And how do we make sure he doesn't crawl out of this? Jasmine's expression darkened. He's going to try to run, she said. We make sure he doesn't. Steele moved fast. Jasmine watched from a rooftop as he stormed out of a hidden government office, a phone pressed to his ear. His usual calm arrogance was gone. He looked angry, desperate. He knew his empire was collapsing. Knew he was about to be hunted like a rat. Jasmine watched as he climbed into an unmarked black car with tinted windows. She smirked. Perfect. She tapped her earpiece. He's on the move. Ryan's voice crackled in her ear. We're right behind him. Jasmine descended the rooftop, her movements swift and silent. This was it. Steele had no more power, no more resources, and in a few minutes, he'd have nowhere left to run. The black car sped through the streets, weaving through late-night traffic. Ryan's stolen SUV tailed it closely, but not too close. Jasmine, moving on foot, took the shortcuts she knew best: alleyways, rooftops, hidden paths. Then, the black car took a sharp turn, heading toward a private airstrip. Jasmine's pulse spiked. "He's trying to flee the country," she muttered. Nia's voice came through her earpiece. "Not on my watch." Jasmine heard the ping of a security breach as Nia hacked into the airstrip system, grounding all flights now. Jasmine grinned. Steele wasn't going anywhere. Ryan's voice cut in. "We're making our move." Jasmine sprinted. "I'll cut him off." Steele's car screeched to a stop near a waiting private jet. A pilot rushed forward, but before Steele could board, Ryan rammed their SUV into his car. The impact crunched metal and shattered glass. Steele stumbled out, coughing. Jasmine stepped into the open, gun raised. "It's over, Steele." Steele froze, his eyes darting between her and Ryan. Then, he laughed. A cold, bitter sound. "Over," he sneered. "You think exposing me changes anything?" Jasmine's grip tightened on her gun. "You're finished," she said. Steele smirked. "You really don't get it, do you? People like me don't lose." He spread his arms. "You took away my empire, sure. But this country? It runs on men like me." Jasmine's jaw tightened. Steele's eyes glinted. "Kill me, and another takes my place. Arrest me? I vanish into a black site, only to resurface later. You haven't won, Carter. You've just delayed the inevitable." Jasmine exhaled slowly. Then she said, "You're right." Steele's smirk returned. "Of course I am." Bang. Steele dropped to his knees, a bullet buried in his leg. He screamed. Jasmine lowered her gun, her expression cold. "I'm not going to kill you," she said. "I'm going to make sure you rot." Ryan grinned. "Good choice." Police sirens screeched in the distance. Jasmine took a step closer, crouching to Steele's level. "You wanted me erased," she whispered. "Now, the whole world knows who I am." Steele's face drained of color. The sirens grew louder. Jasmine stood, stepping back. Ryan holstered his weapon. "Looks like your ride's here." Steele's rage twisted into panic as FBI agents swarmed the airstrip, rifles raised. "Marcus Steele," one of them shouted. "You're under arrest for conspiracy, treason, and multiple counts of murder." Steele's mouth opened, but nothing came out. His empire was gone. His power was gone. And now, he was just another prisoner. Jasmine watched as they dragged him away, sirens flashing against the night sky. Ryan exhaled. "So, what now?" Jasmine thought for a moment. Then she smiled. "Now, we disappear." Ryan chuckled. "I like the sound of that." Nia's voice came through the earpiece. "You two better hurry. The whole world still thinks you're fugitives." Jasmine turned to Ryan. "One last mission?" Ryan smirked. "Always." Jasmine took one final look at Steele, his rage, his defeat, before turning away. The past was over. The future? That was hers to decide. She and Ryan stepped into the shadows. And then they were gone.